pleasant.
Welcome back to episode 230 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, I'll tell you three folks who have no idea where it's going tonight, because unfortunately, if you've seen our social media, last minute we lost our guest. We wish them well. It's a minor medical emergency, we hope, within the family, and we hope that they get over it quickly and can return and be on the podcast at some point in the very near future. But don't you worry, I'm sure we could talk twaddle for an hour. Gaza, you capable of talking twaddle for an hour?
Evening all, evening in the world. I can't believe you asked me that question. I think you very well know the answer to that. After too many years of listening to me talk absolute bollocks for significant periods of time about subjects that I know absolutely all about. So we'll see where this episode goes. No doubt we'll have a bit of a laugh along the way. And looking forward. It's been a while since we've just the three of us just sort of met and just sort of had a bit good old chinwag sort of thing. So yeah, looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I was planning on doing something in July where we just sat and cobbled together a few ideas. So it's probably forward a bit, and if it goes well, we'll do it again in July. If it doesn't go well, I'll start coercing guests. Dave, how are you keeping?
I'm all right, thank you. And we're going to have no trouble guests on the podcast, so the hour's going to fly by. I'm just going to sit back and watch football, to be honest.
Why not? And it's probably something we'll talk about. Like, first thing I wanted to touch on, though, is just to say thank you for anybody who's listened and emailed as well and commented on our YouTube video, telling me that the comment we got on YouTube was directed at me, saying I shouldn't be comparing something as magnificent as the Mandela effect to like first-hand memory experiences when we see something, and we can't take it all in. Well, I still think we do, because look, the two aren't necessarily related, and I wasn't saying they were. There's still a comparison to be had. But yeah, really popular episode, so thank you very much for listening. But as Dave mentioned, out of football, we love the football, guys. We know you love the football, dude. Have you been watching much of the tournament?
Bits and bobs. I haven't watched. Obviously, I watched the England game, and subs. I've watched a little bit of the game earlier on this evening. Kicks off at 5, and then I'll be honest, I jumped in the hot tub for an hour. So work's busy and all that and stuff. So I was just like, I'm just going to jump in the hot tub for an hour. But obviously, I know the result. I'm in it like a predictably. One of the darts lads said like everyone chucking 20 quid, and half of that goes towards like a predict to score. Half of it was a sweepstake. I ended up getting Serbia in the sweepstake. Fucking hell. Yeah, that's not happening. But no, it's good. It's good fun. Like I say, Portugal are playing as we speak now. Dave, what's the score? Because you're watching it, I assume.
20 minutes gone 0-0. I got Albania in this week at work.
Oh, okay, so beautiful. Yeah, you look all the good teams. You get sweeping. Like it does. Like obviously the sort of the circle goes round, and it says that the next team up is Gary Pickford, and then it spins, and then it comes up in service. Like fucking hell. So like there's like loads of decent teams all still left in there. You're like, why couldn't that be me? But no, and it's good fun. You get like points for the correct score, points for the correct result, and then the sort of if you get 2-0 but it ends up being 3-1, so you get the difference in scores, right? You get bonus points and all that sort of stuff. So it's quite good fun. But no, like I say, I watched the England game. I'm not too disappointed, if I'm honest.
No,
not really. I think tournament football is just about momentum. And I'd rather play poorly in the first game and win 1-0 and then build into it than win really, really comfortably and then sort of drop off. So I thought the first half an hour, 40 minutes, I thought we were really, really good. Second half, who am I to tell Gareth Southgate what he should be doing? Loads of people think that they should be. But yeah, I think a couple of subs that he could have made, possibly he didn't. But as I say, who am I to argue with him? We won. We're top of the group. I think we'll win the group relatively comfortably. So it's all good.
Looking at that group, the interesting thing for me is, like you say, like you rightly say, you kind of picked up after the England game, there was a little bit of disappointment in the result. I
Yeah.
think, people expected a bit of a drubbing, but they won 1-0. You know what I mean? Like I say, the top of the group, it's a good start. Compare that then to France, who again just won 1-0 yesterday, but the reaction is different. France traditionally start quite slowly in tournament football, don't they? And have got a slightly better track record than we do. Sorry, you do, because I follow Wales, but this tournament I will be following England.
Yeah,
but. Isn't that curious though? How is that down to the negative mindset of the British football fan?
Yeah, I suspect so. And you go back to, I mean, when we were growing up, sort of like late 80s, early 90s. If that was an Italian side, they'd be absolutely lauded for the fact they saw the match out. They were 1-0 up, and they'd be absolutely like singing from the rooftop, saying, "Well done, lads! You saw it out. We got the win." And it's just a little bit negative press. I think. The first half an hour was really good, really fluid, interchangeable. Front positions were going very well. Without getting too much on my high horse, I think Kane drops a little bit deep, although he says he didn't. I think he sometimes drops a bit too deep, and then he takes the space of the other players. Personally speaking, but if Southgate's asked him to do that, then so be it. Yeah, I mean, you never know, dear. Behind closed doors, Southgate might be saying do that. I personally just think if he does that, you then need somebody like an Eze or a Gordon who's going to run in behind, because then that stretches the play. But as I say, that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. I look forward to seeing what he does on Thursday, I think, our next game. So we'll wait and see.
Who do they play next?
Is it Denmark? Is it Thursday?
Denmark.
I think it's Denmark. And then I think we've got, is it Slovenia? Last game of the group. Oh, Slovakia. I think it's Slovenia, actually.
They're similar. They sound very similar, geographically speaking. They could be quite close together.
Yeah, although they could be not.
Yeah,
Depending on my geography, I've got no idea.
I have no idea. Dave, you're kind of... No, you're not.
I'm on a football or I'm on a geography.
Yeah,
which way were you going there?
I'm not very good on geography where places are, but I did watch the match, watched it with Albert, and you did start strong and it looked fairly comfortable. I think it was comfortable throughout the entire game. I think just because the tempo changed a bit and we soaked up a bit of pressure, I think it was quite controlled. But the problem is, because it was just 1-0, everyone's sitting there thinking, we're sitting deep, we're not doing the flair, that they're going to get back in the game. Had it been 2-0 playing like that, I think people would have viewed it differently and viewed it more like we're just seeing this out. Yeah. And when we scored, I said to Albert, I said, look, unless we get another in the next 10 minutes, what will happen is we'll start to sit back. They'll put more pressure on and get more in the game, and it won't look like a very comfortable win. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's tournament football. You've just got to win.
Yeah. No, I agree. And people talking about Kane, and look, I do think that their centre half, I'm not even going to attempt to remember his name, and if I did remember it, pronounce it. But I think he bullied Kane a little bit, and therefore I think the ball didn't really stick with Kane. So then he ended up coming a bit deeper just to try to get in the game. And I think they were saying, like, was it after about 20 minutes or whatever, 25 minutes, Dave? If you watched it, you might remember. He hadn't had a kick. Was it about first 20 minutes, half an hour?
Well, yeah, it's almost half an hour, one touch in half an hour.
Yeah. And I think, we played the possession football, and I thought the midfield was really good. I thought Bellingham was good. I thought Foden, actually, for the first half an hour was pretty good. Saka was on fire for the first half an hour, 40 minutes. He had their sort of left back on toast sort of thing. But with Kane dropping a bit deeper, what that means is that their defense can then push a little bit, and they can just squeeze the play a little bit. And because we didn't really have anybody that's going to go beyond, nobody's going to, like, Trent was in there to hit those balls and to hit those through balls, but with nobody really running beyond the defense. Saka's not really that type of player. He comes to the ball because he wants it to his feet. Foden comes to the ball because he wants it to his feet. Bellingham does the same. Bellingham hasn't got express pace, neither has Foden. Saka's pretty quick, but that's not his game. And I just thought if Kane does drop, he just condenses the play a little bit, and then not it gets in each other's way, but there's no real area to play football then. And I just think we just invited a bit of the pressure. But as you said, David, we're pretty comfortable. And Pickford made one good save, I felt. He came and claimed a couple of crosses and that. But it's always a worry that because they were quite a big physical side, is that if you invite the pressure, crosses are going to come into your box. And when you invite pressure, you never know about knockdowns and deflections and all that sort of thing. So, but I don't think it was as dramatically a bad performance as quite a lot of people were making out. I thought we were relatively comfortable, if I'm honest, from watching it.
I think the other thing is as well that armchair fans probably don't appreciate is it's the first game in quite a long tournament, and they were a very physical side. If our flair players start pelting at them, they're just going to get hacked down, and then they're going to pick up injuries, and there's just no need to do it.
Well, you look at the first half an hour, 40 minutes, and I don't know the stats, but Bellingham must have been fouled 4, 5, 6 times. I don't know genuinely. I wish I'd have bet on that actually, but and there was a couple that you thought, not the targeting him, but because he has the ball a lot, they're going to be quite physical. And the other thing is, people who qualify for these tournaments, they're no mugs. I mean, gone are the days where there was an easy game in international football, maybe if you get San Marino or Gibraltar or somewhere. But these teams are qualifying now. They put a low block on and they say, you know what, we're just going to have 2 banks of 4. We'll keep one guy up front. If you can break us down, break us down. If not, then we'll take a 0-0. We might get a breakaway 1-0. It's that, these teams are not going to come out and play against us because generally speaking, they know that we can then pick them off and we can score goals. So what they do is they're very compact. They're very hard to beat. I suppose, in a way, no disrespect, a bit like the Welsh, a bit like the Scottish, although they were shit against Germany. But, but they go to these tournaments and they try to be compact. And then if they can take their opportunity, a free kick, a corner, whatever it may be, then they'll do that. Yeah. They're never going to come out and play against. It's a bit like, you go toe-to-toe against Arsenal. Yeah, we got beat 4-1, but we give it a good go. It's like, well, what goes that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you look at the teams that have been successful against us, like Aston Villa last year. They do play good attacking, free-flowing football, but they didn't against us. They changed the tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
They knew it would work, and fair play to them.
And you've got Watkins on. You've got Watkins. You've got the names off the top of my head. Young Leon Bailey. Quite quick players who, when you get your ball, you can explode quite quickly forward, and you can break quite quickly, and that's what you exploit, isn't it? And that's what I think teams against England will exploit. Because, with the greatest respect, Stones ain't quick at the back. Gahey is. I thought Gahey did decent. I thought he had a pretty decent game. I don't think he's express quick, which again is why I thought it was a bit of a strange decision not to take Branthwaite, because he's big, he's physical, and he's quick. So I felt as though that was a little bit of a mistake. I am a bit biased. I'm an Everton fan, obviously, but I do think that was a bit of a mistake because I don't see what Lewis Dunk brings to the side, if I'm honest. But that might be me sour grapes because Branthwaite didn't go.
Quite possibly. Well, here's the thing, though. So Dave says, like I say, it's tournament football, but there's not an awful lot of games that you actually end up playing because of the amount of teams that actually start the competition. So I think he only plays something like 7 games. The winner only plays 7 games.
I think there's only 8 teams that don't go through after the first round of matches. Is there like, I don't know, is it 6 groups of 4 or 8 groups of 4, whatever it is? And I think there's only 8 that don't go through.
Yeah.
And then you play. Is it like another group? I don't know how it's, but then it's
6. I'll tell you guys, there's 6 groups of 4. Yeah, so that's 24 teams, and the top 2 go through 12, but you obviously need 16 for the next round. So the 4 best third place go through 16, and then obviously 16, 8, 4, 2.
Yeah, so 16 out of 24. Did you say 6 groups of 4, Dave?
6 groups of 4. So top 2 of the groups plus the 4 best third place.
Yeah, so basically you're only looking at 8 teams that don't go through.
Yeah.
So then you'll make 16, and then that would be like, I should say, quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, so on.
And the interesting thing about this tournament is actually, when you look at the World Cup, more often than not, the favourites generally are in the final or win. This is a competition that has been won in the past by teams that you necessarily wouldn't really expect to even get to the final. Like Denmark won it many years ago. I think Greece won it.
Greece,
yeah.
I remember the Greece one really, really well. They were the 1-0 merchants. They went through, and I think they won 1-0. They drew a game. They won 1-0. So they went through with like 2 wins and like 2 goals for and none against or whatever. And then I think they went through on one of the knockout rounds, like maybe penalties, and then there was a goal in extra time, and they won 1-0. And it was literally just that, like, and they weren't the most attractive team to watch, but they knew their job, they knew their roles, they knew what they were doing. You signed bloody John Jensen on the back of his European exploits. He scored 2 absolute crackers.
Yeah, then
didn't score for about 15 years or whatever it was after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was
Go on, Johnny Jensen.
And funnily enough, it was that and Pal Iderson were basically what got George Graham the sack for taking bungs on those guys. Shocking. So that, I mean, if you think about that, Denmark winning it, Greece winning it, yeah, for sure. Like, we've had some good sides. I'm not saying they weren't good sides. We've had some great sides winning. When you think about the French side that won it, and the Spanish side that won it a couple of years ago. Although they scraped it a little bit in the final. Do England realistically stand a chance of winning it?
Yeah.
Realistically?
Yeah, realistically. I genuinely do. I think we're one of the favourites. I think rightly we're one of the favourites. We didn't perform brilliantly, but then as you just mentioned, neither did France. They got a 1-0. We got a 1-0. I do. I think, and look, it'll come down to a bit of luck along the way. It'll come down to a little bit of Southgate's tactics. I think he needs to be a bit brave, and I mean, there's someone popped up on social media. I can't remember them now, but there are loads of memes and photos and stuff. There were captions, and some of them were just like genius, Gareth Southgate so defensive. And then there's a couple of me like, sort of thing, and it's like dead funny. But I do think he needs to take a chance. I think if I'm being ultra critical, I think he worries about what the other team do and trying to negate them instead of letting them worry about what we can do and making sure that they try to negate us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
go on. Can I ask a question? You said, I think, Gaz, you said England are one of the favourites. And if you look at the bookmakers, I think it's us and France, I think 1 and 2, something like that. But I'm not quite sure how this works because, and Adam, you both might know this, but the bookmakers in this country, the odds are presumably quite short for one reason, that a lot of people are betting on it, not just because of the actual skill or ability of the team. So in other countries, like in Spain or in Germany, for example, are we still sort of favourites and France second favourites?
I believe so.
I suspect so. I mean, I do think, and again, Adam might be able to sort of put me right on this. I do think almost it's a bit of a global market. I do think you do get some national variances as such, and you might get the odd patriotic bet and stuff. But I do think things like the Euros and things like the World Cup and your big international tournaments, I do think it's almost like a global market, and people around the world will bet and go, actually, they are probably the favourites. I don't know whether it's the same. You look at horse racing, you can have a horse that's 20-1 or whatever, and then all of a sudden loads of people bet on that. And irrespective of how good that horse is, if loads of people bet on it, then the odds come down.
Yeah.
Because loads and loads and loads of people bet on it. So if you had like thousands of people putting thousands of pounds on this horse, it would go from 20-1 to 5-1.
Yeah.
Because the amount of bet, and I don't know whether the football market is like that. I don't know genuinely. I don't work in the industry, so I'm not sure. But I do suspect, Dave, that there's probably around Europe, you'll get your patriotic bets, and you'll get people going, I'll have a $5 on Denmark because I'm Danish, or a $5 on Serbia because I'm Serb, or whatever. But I do think you'll then get people going, but actually I'm going to put a tenner on France or England because I think they probably have got a good chance of winning. Yeah. I might be wrong with that. That's just how I think it works.
No, to use a betting phrase, you're pretty much on the money there, dude.
Cheers, kid.
Yeah. No, that is, yeah. We are there, and we are. I'm going to stop saying we because I am Wales, but I am supporting England for this tournament. Yeah, I think England are there, and are there for a very good reason. I think realistically, but here's the question: if they do win it, and all the talk is at the end of this tournament that Gareth Southgate is likely going to walk away. If they do win it, does he stay?
Yes.
You think?
I think if he wins, to be fair, I think if he gets to the final, I think he'll probably stay. I think what he'll do is, because of the crop of young talent we've got, and you go back to the golden generation. I hate using that phrase, but we had a golden generation, and then Belgium had a golden generation. I mean, Belgium was the other one. I mean, they got beat a couple of nights. Was it last night? A couple of nights ago? Yeah. Blimey. But their golden generation didn't really perform. Ours didn't. So you go back to Ferdinand and Gerrard and Scholes and Beckham and Rooney and Owen and Christ. I mean, you look at those players on paper and you think, how the hell did they not win anything? I mean, he's genuinely like amazing talent. And I think this crop of this team, so you Bellingham, your Foden, your Sakas, your Palmer. Okay, Kane is Kane and he's a little bit older, but I think Rice, I mean, how good was Rice, by the way? Like an unbelievable player. So we've got this real crop of good young talent. So I think if he gets to the final, I think he'll probably say, in 2 years' time, give me a crack at the World Cup, and then I'll go after that.
You think? Yeah, it's interesting. I suspect you might be right. He might very well be tempted to stay. Although if it was me, say he does win it, there'd be an awful temptation to go out at the top and think,
See you later.
I ain't going to top this.
Yeah, but you look at his record. I mean, what did we get? Was it semi-finals of the World Cup, finals of the Euros, or whatever it is? So, his record actually in major tournaments stands up against
anybody's. Any England man.
Any England manager, I'd say maybe any international manager, other than, as you mentioned earlier, the really good Spanish side that went, did they win the Euros, the Worlds, the Euros, or whatever it was, like 4 years apart. So they won the Euros, 2 years later won the Worlds, and then 2 years later won the Euros. Was that right, or something? Yeah. And then the German side that did sort of similar back in the day.
Yeah, and
the French I think have done it, and Brazil have had teams and stuff. So. But I think you when you look at, as I say, look at the final of the Euros and we lost on penalties, and you look at the semi-final of the World Cup, and arguably we should have beaten Croatia, in my opinion. So his record is pretty decent.
Yeah, interesting. And then there's all the talk, I mean, he's tipped to go to Man United, Dave, your team. That's one of the places they're talking about him going. Do you believe that? Did you want to see him there?
Well, I didn't believe it at all. I didn't think Tag Han. God, what's his name?
The Japanese lad.
No.
Do you mean Eric Ten Hag?
That's him. Him. Eric. I never believed he was going to go anywhere anyway. So Gareth Southgate's a very capable manager, so I wouldn't have any problems with him being Man United manager.
It's funny because driving home, I listen to Talk Sport a lot, and Andy Goldstein is on drive, and he comes out about 4 o'clock, and he does 4 till 7 or whatever. So when I'm driving him and listening to him, and he genuinely will not have Southgate whatsoever. I don't know whether he dislikes him or he just dislikes him, or the idea of him being at United. I think he supports him as an England manager, but literally he just absolutely any mention of it. And Darren Bent loves winding him up. He's like, well, you're next manager and stuff, and literally he just has none of it at all.
So the other game that you mentioned there as well, dude, Belgium. Couple of goals ruled out. Lukaku, who used to play for Everton, your boys, didn't he?
He did.
And he had 2 ruled out. What did you make of those? I mean, the first one was clearly offside.
Oh, yeah, clearly offside. Look, I mean, it's a bit of interpretation. And I think, look, we can delve into the, was it goal, was it not a goal? Should VAR get involved? Should they not get involved? Should they rule it out? Should they not rule it out? Should we left the refs on the field? There's 3 of them. They're not linesmen anymore. They're assistant referees. You got 3 referees effectively. Is that enough to be able to manage a game? Don't know. Part of me would like to think it goes back to the mid 80s, early 90s, where there's no VAR and you just talk about shit refs. Like in the pub. I mean, we've got VAR and we're still talking about shit refs. So it hasn't really changed that much, to be fair, has it? So
it hasn't, no. I mean,
VAR is subjective.
It is subjective.
And that for me is the real crux of it. Goal line technology, I've got no issue with that.
No.
So goal line technology, is it over the line? Is it not? The ref gets a little signal on his watch or whatever. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. No problem with that, because that's a factual decision.
Science.
Line decisions, I've got no issue with. So if you are going offside, I've got no issue with that, because whether you make it at the front of the foot, the back of the foot, fucking nose, the head, whatever point you choose, theoretically,
we won't get into the offside rule.
However, the VAR interaction with the referee on the field makes a decision. The VAR hub, there's been 2 refs, 3 refs, or whatever, talking about it. That's still subjective, because you can have 3 refs in the VAR hub coming up with a completely different decision than a different 3 refs in a hub next door. So if you put Team A refs in this hub and Team B refs in that hub and showed them exactly the same footage, this group will come up with a different decision than this group, and they would advise the ref differently. Yeah. You can't have that. Just make the ref make the decision.
I think they should take a look at X Factor in the VAR room, and literally any incident that goes to review by them, or they think they want to look at, they've got 30 seconds, and if all 3 of them don't press the button to change the decision of the ref within 30 seconds, the ref decision stands. Get on with the game.
I know where you're coming from with that. And interesting enough, Wolves had put it forward, hadn't it, to actually
they wanted to bid. Well, I think is it I want to say Norway or Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries, I'm sure. They binned it off. Their FA voted to bin video referees off, and they just went, you know what, you're ref, you deal with it.
Yeah, it detracts from the game. It does detract from the game. It's some like because of the length of time it takes to make a decision. In terms of sounds gone a bit funny. Oh, it's Dave turning his stuff off. So yeah, in terms of the decision against Belgium, I thought that was an unusual one. Because it came up, it hit his hand. It was clearly ball to hand. The guy hasn't tried to control the ball. Yes, he did deflect it. Yes, there's a good chance the defender would have taken it on his chest, perhaps knocked it away. However, I don't think it was intentional, and I don't see how you could watch that and think the guys clearly gained an advantage by unfair play. But that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, and now yours will be different than mine. So if you're in the VAR booth, you'd interpret it in one way. And I know you've got the law book in front of you, but I mean, Dave's right. I think, do you almost do a and you've got three guys and you do a so that's a no, and then you do a that's a yes. So you got three guys and they'll go right, so that's 2 out of 3 said no, so it's no penalty. You decide that within 30 seconds.
And then if everybody agrees, they give it a
can I get a and that goes into ref's earpiece and he goes penalty. So and I think Dave, you're probably right. I mean, part of the issue with VAR is it takes so fucking long. Yeah. It takes so long, man. And another bugbear of mine, oh god, I'm on my high horse now. They always show the still. They always show the still image. So you show the still image and you think, fuck, that's a leg breaker, that is. I mean, admittedly, the Scottish guy on Gundogan, whoever, actually could have broken his leg. But you look at the still image and that's the first image that they show the ref all the time. In my opinion, you should get the ref to watch it in real time. No slow-mos, no super slow-mo, no still photos. Get him to watch it in real time and make a decision.
Yeah. Well, here's something interesting. It's Sweden that binned off VAR. But do you know something that's different in Sweden, which may have been the reason for that?
Go on.
Two clubs,
TV cameras.
No, the clubs have to be at least 51% fan-owned.
Right. Okay.
So basically, the fans have sacked it off, essentially.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, the difference in the Premier League, when you put something forward like that, I think,
money?
Well, it is. They need, is it 14 people to agree? 14 teams to agree?
Is it how many in the Premiership? 20. So I think it's 14, but didn't Man City say that they wanted to reduce that number to 12? I'm sure there was a.
Well, if Man City has said it, that will happen anyway.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because Man City, I'm sure that there was 14, and I'm sure Man City were putting forward something to do with they wanted to reduce the number that would mean it was carried or not carried, if that makes sense, depending on which side of the argument you're on.
Because ultimately now, I think the situation is if one person agrees with the Big Six, and the Big Six basically decided, don't they? Let's be honest.
Well, look, you look at your FFP, and again, this is my opinion. No opinions of anybody else. I think there will be a different outcome for Man City as there is for Everton, Forest, Leicester when they come up, because Leicester could start at -10 because they're going to be hammered.
Yeah.
So, they come up to the Premier League, they'll start at -10, give or take. And look, in a really cynical world, Man City are too valuable to the Premier League for Man City not to be in the Premier League. Yeah. So they're too valuable as a global entity, as a global product to sell the Premier League around the world. So you're not gonna dock them points, which knocks them out of the Premier League. I think what might happen is they might take a plea bargain and say, well, I'll tell you what, if we plead guilty to those 10, drop the other 103 and fine us £200 million or whatever. Well, to them, that's peanuts, in it. You know what I mean? So I think that's where we'll get. I think they'll have a bit of a plea bargain. They'll do, because there's no way they're gonna drop them 50, 60, 70 points. If Everton got done initially 10, I know we got some back, initially 10 for 20 million. And Man City are reportedly X, Y, and Z. There's 113 charges. Yeah, they're going to be docked in 100 points or whatever it may be.
Well, and this is it. I know what you're saying. For me, and it goes back. I read it somewhere. In likelihood it was on social media. One of these reactionary posts, not about football, but in terms of if something is punishable by a fine, that means it's okay for rich people to do it.
Exactly.
And I think if you do that for Man City, it's basically saying you can pay that, you chuck some more money our way and we'll ignore the financial problems. And when you put it in that sense, it's like, that's not right. That isn't right.
Look, FFP.
As a bitter Arsenal fan,
FFP was brought in, I think, for the right reasons. However, there is an argument to say it shouldn't be in, and you find your level and all of that. Newcastle are the richest club in the world, and can't buy a player. And now there's talk that they're going to have to sell Guimaraes, they're going to have to sell X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
Isak. To be fair, he'd be a fucking cracking buy for you, but you've got Isak. They're on about selling. You've got Guimaraes. They're on about selling. Why? Because they have to meet FFP.
Yeah.
They're the richest club in the world, for Christ's sake. So all these owners come in. And I can't remember, it might be one of the guys at the golf club made a brilliant point. You look at Villa this season. Villa have got into the Champions League. They can't go and sign 3-4 players and give the Champions League a really good go this year. Because in a year's time, 18 months' time, 2 years' time, they're going to fall foul of FFP. So they can't give it a go. And I'm not saying you buy the league and all of that, but you go back in history and you look at Ferguson. Don't you get me wrong. Man United bought a fucking truckload of players, and that went almost under the radar and stuff. And now everyone's saying, "Oh, Man City bought the league and this, that, and the other." If that was the case, Newcastle will be doing that, but they can't because they're so worried about FFP.
I know, but I think the danger is global brands like Man City, like Newcastle, like Arsenal, like Man United. They cannot. They can go out and they can buy whoever they want. And they can attract players to come to them. What we really want to do is see the likes of Aston Villa, who are a little bit less fashionable. Everton, very unfashionable club. Being able to attract people to come to them. It's about leveling that playing field. We're never going to get to how it is in the States. That's not realistic. You're never going to get that balance. But I do think it can't be the richest club wins the league, which I'm pretty sure if you were to look at the players, the club that spent the most money, in most instances, will be winning the league, and I'm not sure that's right.
And look, I'm not saying it. Although there are some people saying, "Yeah, make it free for all." And if people want to go and if Man City want to go and pay 30-40 million over the odds for a player because they can, who was it back in? I can't think who it was. They bought a player and they didn't need him. They just bought a player, so that meant that Arsenal or Man United couldn't buy him. So they went and bought him because they didn't want one of their competitors to buy him. I can't think who it was, but. But if these teams want to pay over the odds, then let them. And there is an argument for that. I think there has to be a happy medium. Dave, I don't know what, we've gone from Euros obviously to FFP now, but I don't know what your thoughts are. Just look, we'll never get to the point in America where you have your salary cap and you have a certain limit. And if you go over that, then you're allowed one franchise player. So for Arsenal, it might be Declan Rice. You're allowed a franchise player and you can pay him whatever you want. But then everybody else has to conform to this band. It's almost like you got 5 players that you can pay in that band. You've got 5 you can pay in that band. You got 5. We'll never get to that in this country because we're so far behind it. And I like the American system. I like the salary cap because it tries to level the playing field. What the parameters would be for Premiership football, I don't know.
I think the difficulty is that the American game is not worldwide, so it's all contained within one country, and therefore it works. Football is worldwide, and even if every club in the world that played under FIFA agreed to the same rules, it just wouldn't work because it'd just be way too complicated. You've got currency, exchange rates. There's just so many variables that it'd be very, very difficult. And so then you're only looking at restricting it within your own leagues. And the moment you start to do that, then you can struggle to attract the top talent, which can then impact the game and the quality of the game. So the argument would be, but actually it would probably just impact on the finances of the top clubs, and maybe to a very minor thing, it may impact the quality of the English players because they're not playing alongside some better players. But the other side of that is you'd probably end up playing more English players in the Premiership, which would probably help. So there's no black and white with it, I don't think.
Yeah, and you're right. You're not going to get a situation where you turn around and say, each of your national countries, and I don't know, you're allowed, and I'm making this figure up, you're allowed to spend 70 or 75% of your total annual turnover on player wages or whatever. So your big clubs can spend more, your smaller clubs can spend less. But what happens is when you get those players, it's like you go to the Champions League and you've got teams from France and from Belgium and from Spain and Germany and Italy and all that. Well, actually, when you're playing that player can't play and that player can't play and that player can't play. It just, and Dave's right, it just dilutes the whole, I suppose, the whole international nature of the Champions League and so on. And you're right, Dave, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of the American sports are contained and it's only teams in America, and therefore they all subscribe to that, which makes it possibly workable.
Yeah, the other big, sorry, Adam. The other big problem with the percentage of anything related to profitability or revenue is that it just means the bigger get bigger and the smaller fall further behind.
That's it, and that's my concern. And good evening to Lee from the Boo Brothers as well, who says we can't even get FFP right. Just look at City 115 charging, and nothing is done. So that is the perception,
It is the perception, and Lee, you're right. And I think what will happen is that Man City will just wrap that up in legal wranglings and challenge after challenge after challenge. And if they get one, they'll challenge again and they'll challenge again. And then in 5 years' time, it's still Man City. And as much as, and I go back to what I said about 5 minutes ago, as much as the Premier League need to be seen to be doing something, Man City as a commodity to the Premier League they're too valuable as a commodity, and therefore nothing will be done by the Premier League to stamp out what Man City have done. If they have done anything, I'll just put that in there because we don't know. There's charges, but we don't know. But if they have done it, nothing really significant will be done. I think the Premier League, look, there's loads of sort of brochures and posters around Everton going corrupt and this and that. And I suspect that Notts Forest and Leicester are the same because we're perceived to be smaller clubs. So actually, we haven't got the kickback as Man City and the bigger clubs. So therefore, I say, they'll pick on us. And I go back to, Richard, whatever his name was from the Premier League. He refused to provide the minutes of the meeting where they decided on the charges for Everton. So he refused to forward those minutes. I said, well, can you show me the evidence, the documentation that said that if you do this, you get 10 points? He refused that because there wasn't one. They basically just gone, 10. And where's the statute for that? Where's your precedent for that? And there isn't one. Now, if they have done that, look, I've got no issue. If Everton were guilty, fine.
Which, to be fair to Everton, they've said
our own admission,
they admitted that they were guilty.
It wasn't players. We didn't go mad on transfers like Forest, and they bought 57,000 in first-team players or whatever. We're not like that. It was a 20 million, 30 million pound payment, interest payment on our stadium. It was either misappropriated into the wrong account, whatever. And we held our hands up and went, I think we've done it. Come and have a look at it. Here we are, and we got done 10 points. Yeah, we got some back on whatever. But
it was a bit of a father Ted. That money was just resting in my account.
yeah. It was just there, so we thought we'd do something with it.
Yeah, and like Lee says, it's not consistent, and that is the frustrating thing.
Yeah.
Like we said, Lee, earlier, if it is a case where it's a fine that is levied at them because it's Man City and we want to keep them happy, it's not fair. It's rewarding them because they can afford to pay more. Now, let's move it on to something a little less contentious than football, FFP, the Euros, Gareth Southgate and all that. There's a little bit of an election happening in the UK and one happening in the US, as it just so happens. Great times, great exciting times if you're a tabloid, if they still exist, or a broadsheet, and they definitely don't exist. But certainly the news is sort of hyped up about this at the moment. And one thing I was listening to on 5 Live on my drive into work the other day was the Reform Party and our good friend Nigel Farage, who we've said wonderful things about on this podcast in the past. There's a danger that party overtakes the Conservatives. Is that what you want to see?
No. Look, as much rhetoric that it comes out of his mouth and propaganda he wants to spit or whatever, and as much as he turned around and said, the Reform Party are now the opposition because actually Conservatives are shite and Labour are going to win, so therefore we are the opposition.
Is it rhetoric though? Because I mean, we're not talking.
But it's not backed up in the polls, though, is it? So that's
well,
they're doing okay, but they're not the opposition.
They are no, they're not the opposition, and God willing, they won't be. Jesus Christ, I've got no love for the Tories, but I'd much rather see the Tories in opposition than the bloody Reform Party. But they are catching and they are gaining. And actually, I think Farage could be damaging for the Tory vote, more damaging than Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, because him and his, he's going to detract a lot of racists away from the Tories, isn't he? That's a risk.
Who was it was it on this podcast? I can't think who it was. Who were we talking to, dude? Were we together?
I think Mr. Biggs had a thing or two to say about.
Oh, he did. No, it wasn't that though. That was. I enjoyed Mr. Biggs actually. We need to get him back on. But somebody said, rather than not voting, go and then spoil your paper. Who said that?
It was Biggie.
Was it Biggie?
Yeah,
was it Biggie? And he said rather than not turning up, because that just makes them think, well, you just can't be asked. He said if you turn up, that makes them think that you can be asked, but actually you're not in agreement with any of the. And we made a joke, didn't we? So what we said was we need to go there and just write Toyboy Radio all over our polling cards, whatever. Because what that means is you're still bothered about it, but you don't agree with any of the parties, and therefore you're just going to spoil it. And it was Biggie. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Don't write it on your polling card, folks. They might not let you in. But
yeah.
Write it on your little slip when you vote.
Lee, you're absolutely right there with that quote, by the way. Yeah. What we were just there. I amen to that, brother.
Yeah, politics is shite.
There's been over the years, I can remember it as long as I've been able to vote, that there's always been like this. Please, can we have none of the above as an actual option, which can then be counted? But it's never going to happen. You've got to vote for a candidate. But I've had conversations with people. I don't know who to vote for. They're all as bad as each other, and ultimately, you should vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for. In a sense, you just should vote because that's democracy. And ultimately, this time round, it is pretty much the least worst of them. I'm a conservative voter, and my underpinning for that is, I think, in the economy and the way you run the country in the future. And I think the left-wing socialist is good in a lot of ways, but ultimately, over a period of 5 to 10 years, it will build into the economy, into the country, into the state, so much bad stuff and inefficiencies and costs that then it'll take 15, 20 years to get back out of it. I just wish that the Conservative Party would be more centre right, rather than right and further right, as they can sometimes appear. Because I think that that's probably the best politics. You bring the free market and capitalism, but you rein it in to an extent that actually you don't go all out. You go 80% that, but you put a dedicated chunk of that into helping social and being fair and treating people right. I think that's the balance, and I just think at the moment we're not doing that.
Do you not think that you go back to, the glory years, the Conservative Party take that as that's you look at under Thatcher and you look at they were so far right, and then the opposition for Labour were so far left. Do you not think that politics now has become much more centralised, and actually Conservatives aren't as far right and Labour aren't as far left, and a lot of the things that Conservatives do, Labour will agree with, and a lot of the things that Labour do, Conservatives will agree with, and so on and so on. And therefore, it really is on, and I think it hinges on literally like 1, 2, maybe 3 really contentious issues, because a lot of the other stuff, they're very similar in what they say.
That's the illusion of choice, isn't it? The stuff that they agree on, you don't get to vote on.
Yeah.
And like you say, there's a few major policies that they differ on slightly. As Lee says, though, and this is a perception, and I'm not going to tell him he's wrong, because I happen to agree with him virtually 100% in terms of, especially when it comes to the Conservatives, that they are looking after themselves and not the people. There is that view of them their cronyism, what we saw during Brexit, awarding contracts to people, and the guy who's come out this week who basically was awarded billions and spent like millions and millions of pounds on real estate rather than what it was actually gifted for. You know, that's the perception of the Conservative Party. But just a quick one, sorry, guys. You've had your say. We've had the pro-Conservative argument. What I've listened to this week, and what I don't understand, you boys, I don't know whether you're Rishi Sunak fans or not. I know you vote Conservative. I absolutely
historically I have.
Historically,
whether I vote this time or not is
fair play. Listen, you know, point of disclosure. Up until maybe 12 years ago, I voted Conservative. Will never, ever vote for him again. That's by everything I've seen in the last 14 years. I'm disgusted with. But Rishi Sunak, very, very, and listen, I'm no big fan of Labour. I'm not Keir Starmer's fan either. Do you know what I mean? But Keir Starmer's put forward his manifesto, and what Rishi Sunak's criticising him on is, well, we're going to have to put up taxes for this, aren't we? That's terrible what they're doing. And you're thinking, hang on a minute, taxes are at their highest point in 70 years. Why do you think it's okay to criticise and question on taxes when your government has put them up to the worst point it's ever been in 70 years?
I think. Look,
nobody's holding his feet to the flames on that one.
No, look, I think he will argue, and his treasury will argue, and his chancellor will argue that because of the market forces and because of whatever, and let's not go into economics, but the various market forces that dictate inflation and taxes and all of that sort of stuff necessitated an increase in it, and that's what he'll say.
Like, things like Brexit, which the Conservatives were responsible for.
Yeah, and I think that's a hot potato that potentially won't go away for another,
shouldn't do,
however many years. I think this year, I think you can blame the Conservatives for a lot that happened in COVID, and in a way rightly so. However, I think had Labour been in during COVID, you'd be blaming them for exactly the same thing. So I think I think it's just a maelstrom of look, we were hit with Brexit, and we were hit with COVID, and there was a series of real, and I'm not downplaying this at all, really, really significant historical events. Because I think Brexit will be spoken about in a number of years' time.
Spoken about as an absolute disaster. As a huge own goal.
Yeah, and look, I think it was a huge mistake, and I will say that, and I openly will say that. I do think it was a huge mistake. I'm yet to be convinced it wasn't a mistake, and I'm yet to be convinced about in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years we will see the benefits of coming out, and I don't see it. And look, dude, I'm with you. And we disagree on a number of things, and have done historically for a number of years. Yeah. but I mean, maybe politically, I suppose maybe I'd possibly align myself more with Dave than maybe you now had in a way. But
yeah, probably.
I think Brexit was a mistake, and it just was it the day after? Was it the day after or the week after? Can't remember. But it was like 51%, 49%, whatever it was. And then they did another poll like the week after, and it's completely the other way around. So it literally within a week it flipped and stuff. So it was that on the knife edge. Dave, I mean, what are your thoughts? Where I'm not saying who you're voting for, but what are your thoughts just in terms of sort of? Well, he said he will vote for historically. I'm not asking him who he'll vote for this time round. I suspect I know.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on sort of? Is it as clear cut as Labour win and they then become the next parliament? I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's a real danger that they're going to win massively because.
And is that because of what they stand for? Because people don't like the Conservatives, and there's two different things there. But that's a different argument.
It is a different argument, and it's the latter. I think it's nothing to do with Labour. Labour,
it's just a byproduct. People don't like Conservative.
Poor party, poor leader of the Labour Party right now. This Labour Party going against 5, 10, 15 years ago wouldn't have stood a cat and owl's chance. Sorry, Dave. Anyway, what were you about to
say? Probably that.
You two are just being total politicians and just talking right over me. Thanks.
That's it, yeah.
But it's essentially exactly what Adam said. I think the Labour Party hasn't really changed, and they're trying to give the impression they're changing by not saying what they're going to do. In my view, they're not saying anything that's brave. They're just They know that they know they've got the majority. They know they don't need to say they're going to do anything, because I think the economy in the next sort of 6 to 18 months is going to recover, and in 2 years' time we're going to be in a pretty strong place. And Labour are going to ride that, say it's all down to them. And the real danger then is they get a second term, and then in 15 years, 20 years' time, we're in the right mess again. So that's, and I think Reform are taking that many. They'll take that many votes off Conservative that Labour will get all the traditional Labour seats. They'll get all of the red wall seats back from 2019, and then they'll take all of the marginal seats from 2017 or 15, whenever it was, and they'll end up with probably a majority of about 100. And it'll absolutely be terrible for governments in this country, because then what will happen? They'll be the ones in power. All the media will then switch, and they'll then start to attack them, and they'll look to, ridicule individuals and get individuals out of job, and they'll dig into all of every little thing they've done wrong, and they're in power now, so it'll be blown all out of proportion. So the little thing here will suddenly be some crisis, somebody's got to be sacked for, somebody's career's wrecked, and the whole thing will just flip. But the difference is, in 15 years' time, the country will be a mess again.
I just think that Labour
now.
Well, yeah, but there is an argument. I'll get to a point in a minute. I'll just come to that. But there is an argument that had Labour been in for the last 5 years or the last term or 2 terms, we'd been in an even worse position. And take Brexit out of it. Take Brexit out of it. I know you can't prove that, though, can you? No, you can't. But I think that there's a concern that, and Dave's right in as much as what Labour are doing. Labour are being quite offensive in terms of attacking what the Tories will do, or the perception of what they will do, or what the Tories either will do or what the Tories won't do, without actually coming out and saying, well, okay, but this is what we will do. I think all of the rhetoric around the Labour Party is deflecting on what will or won't happen based on other people's decisions and not their own.
I bet they start every meeting by, lads, just don't fuck it up. Okay, we're in a good position. Don't fuck it up. Diane Abbott, yes, I'm looking at you.
I think, Gaz, what you said there is worse than that, because not only are they not saying what they will do, and they do in very woolly terms, but nothing that's any in my view, credible or has any real strength to it. But they're worse. They bang on so much about the past. Adam, you've said it a couple of times, the last 14 years. And it's not about the past, it's about the future, and it's about what they're saying they're going to do and whether you believe they're going to do it. And you can say Brexit was conservative all you want. They did put it in the manifesto. They did open up the vote, but the country voted for it one way. That wasn't the Conservative Party that voted for it. The country voted for it.
And then the whole thing was mismanaged.
But everything's like that. I mean, how's that any different to the election now, or any other event that's trying to sway public opinion? That the newspapers every single day. It's no different to that. And ultimately, the same way as Reform are getting all these votes now, it's all the media, it's all spin, it's all social media mainly. And I wish that they just focus more on the future and stop banging on about what Liz Truss did in 3-6 weeks, whatever it was. Yeah, it was stupid and it was wrong, but that's not, the guy, Rishi Sunak, actually told her at the time, don't do it, it's stupid. Yet he is taking the blame. Labour keep attacking him for what she did, even though he was the one that said, don't do it, it's stupid. It's just crazy.
I hear what you're saying. But when you're saying you've got to look to the future, and the Conservatives are saying this is what we're going to do, it's like, we've had 14 years and all you've done is make a fucking mess of things. Whether you blame Rishi, whether you blame Liz Truss, like whoever you blame, ultimately the Conservative Party needs to take a good long look at itself. And I am someone who has voted for the Conservative Party in the past and voted virtually every time for the Conservative Party, and on the back of what I've seen, will never vote for them again.
But are not. But have the Conservative Party, and I'll agree with you to a certain extent, but have the Conservative Party not spent a number of years rectifying, if that's the right word, their perception of what went wrong under the last Labour government? And is that not just the cycle of what happens and Labour get in and you look at the last Labour government, and you look at when they were in, and then they had a reterm, and there's a cycle of new party gets in, they spend 2 years, 3 years rectifying. They are fortunate or not to get a reterm, so then they start putting the things in place that they want to, because the stuff from historically from the past has been rectified. If that, if you believe that, then if they're lucky enough to get a second term, great. Well, second terms aren't, or third terms aren't. They're not that common. Let's be honest. You might look at an 8-year cycle, give or take. And I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are, Dave. 8 years, maybe. Don't know.
Well, eight is, if you're going really well, you'll go for the full 5, won't you? You'll need 10 to go a year early if you're a bit worried that you won't do the 5.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Or you're riding high. It's traditionally, when you look at, I think maybe, I could be wrong, but I don't want the Thatcher government. They tended to go a little bit early because they were riding high and they thought there was a good chance they're going to get in. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people voted for them. And I'm not going to criticize some of the stuff they did for the economy, but some of the other stuff I would criticize. But that's another matter. Yeah, so Lee says over the years they made sure the companies they had shares in got money from the government. Definitely an accusation which has been leveled at them. So here's my thing. Okay, here's my thing. I'm going to move on from that a little bit. I'm going to move on, but I totally take your point in terms of the way that the politics works is cyclical. There's a difference of opinion slightly between the Conservatives, and certainly the way that they manage nationalisation has tended to be the crux of the matter, and where the funds are positioned, and the level of capitalism on the behalf of the Conservative Party. So here's the thing. If you do see that, like you say, and I totally agree with you, that's exactly what happens. Tories do this. Labour says, I don't agree with that. I'm going to put it in. Tories get back in. I don't agree with what you done. I'm going to put that back in. So there is that damage being done by that cycle. Are we ultimately saying the political system is that flawed by the way that it's managed? And actually, it's the system that's wrong and not the parties.
You see, we've done a podcast on this before. I think
it's wrong
back in the day, and I can't remember what I did yesterday, let alone what we did in the podcast, however long ago. But we did a podcast on this, and we did an episode on this where we spoke about is it the system? Take out Tory and Labour, and almost you look at the American system, the Republicans, the Democrats, almost take that out of the equation. And is it actually, because there were people in America that will go similar to us, and they'll say, well, you've got your Republicans and your Democrats, and they're the main two parties, and you've got the rednecks out in here, there, they're doing whatever, but they'll never get enough votes to gain Parliament. Then you look in the UK and you look at Labour and Conservative, and maybe hung. Mostly just put.
You best remember that. I remember that one. I remember agreeing to go on a ghost hunt with him, and we will.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. Hey, Lee, I'll go on a ghost hunt with you, dude. I've got no problem with that.
You've chipped him up now, Lee. He lost his thread.
I know, yeah. Stop interrupting me, Lee. You're like a politician, honestly.
I'll answer your question a bit briefer. I don't think it's politics that's broken, and that politics is broken because of the media and social media. That's the first thing, that politicians can't just be honest, decent people anymore that say things openly, make mistakes, apologize for it, and get on, because they just get persecuted and driven out of their jobs. But ultimately, the first past the post system, I think, is a bit linear, and it does cause some issues in that you get vast majorities. But ultimately, you've got the socialists and capitalism, and they're two views where the people that are in those respective camps think that they're absolutely the right way for a country to prosper and for everybody in society to benefit, and they just believe there's two different ways of doing it.
There you go. That's your final point on the election. I think we promised 3 things when we title this episode. And when I say we, it's me. I had to come up with it last minute while I was putting my daughter to bed. Euros, we've covered that.
I think we covered that.
Election, I feel we've covered that.
Yeah.
Entertainment, have we covered that? Have we been entertaining?
Well, look, I mean, I think Lee's been pretty entertained by it. and thank you very much for your interaction on this episode, Lee. I'm sure there's lots of things that on our next Ghost Hunt we can. Oh, interestingly, I watched something. Was it the One Show? And Saran Jones was on. And Lee, you might like this sort of thing. And they're talking about she's got a series of programs coming on where that she goes and she talks about witches.
Okay.
And she I think she goes to Salem, but she also mentioned the Pendle Hill Witches,
Ah.
which was quite interesting. And it just sort of got me thinking. I was like, oh, we've done a couple of podcasts and that sort of thing. I mean, it's just a bit weird that like we've had various people on with various expertise on witches and Pendle Hill and all that, and she was talking about it. She's like, oh my god, it's like an amazing thing. I'm really interested in it. I'm thinking podcast, Saran Jones podcast. I mean, it's never going to happen, but it'd be like, oh, we could do that. We could get her and vary. What was the lady? I apologize for you listening. What was the lady's name? The Pendle Hill witch lady, the really knowledgeable lady.
Dude, I'm terrible with names. Don't ask me. Don't put me on the spot. I know exactly what you mean. And we had a
wife to the
yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. Anyway, I was thinking like Serrano, and actually, genuinely, I looked up her socials and I was like, can we get her on? I mean, she won't because she's like a mega ITV sort of actress and stuff. But I was like, oh, can we get her on or not? I'm not sure.
Yeah, leave it on, man. Bless him. Yeah. So here's my final thought. Then this is one thing I wanted to finish. I chucked it out at the start before when we were in the green room, as it were. We were discussing what we're going to talk about this episode. Like I say, we had a guest plan. God bless her. Hopefully, we'll get her on soon because I do think again. Yeah, I'd like to get on before the election's through. Actually,
absolutely, because that's one of the things that actually is a real hot potato.
Immigration. Yeah, absolutely. But I'd like to discuss it, and I'd like to hear her perspective on it as well. So. Andy just recently, the fourth member of TBR, like, you know, he's almost like Pete Best from the Beatles. So, you know, he's there in the background somewhere. Just recently got a couple of tattoos. So he's a big fan of Alien Ant Farm. So he's got an Alien Ant Farm tattoo on his forearm. And then obviously his dog, Sophie, sadly passed away a little while ago. And he's had a tattoo of her face on his arm. Looks lovely, actually. Really good tattoo. Looks way better, actually, when you see it than in the photograph he shared on Facebook. I will say that for you. It is a very good tattoo. Here's my query. Now, I know you two guys haven't got tattoos, whereas I do have a number of them made mainly. Well, I've done mainly when I made a poor decision when I had too much to drink. I will say that, but nonetheless, it's a great reminder of not to do good stupid stuff when I see myself in the mirror. So, well, it's not actually, to be fair.
There's plenty of other things you need to worry about when you look yourself in the mirror.
Exactly. Moving on. I try not to look at myself in the mirror. So, what would be? I know the answer is probably nothing, but I'm going to ask anyway. What would be the one thing that you might think if I was going to get a tattoo? It would be that. I'm going to come to Gaz first because I'd say slightly more likely to, but never would. But Dave, try and think of something for us.
Look, I think, and it sounds really cheesy, and it sounds like loads of people have done it. I suppose the only thing I'd consider is maybe have my kids' names, and that's now whether or not I would actually have their names or whether I would have a symbol meaning their names or something like that. I think, I mean, it's a bit cheesy. Am I likely to? I mean, I'm 51 years old now. I mean, you never say never. So, am I 51 or 50? Dave, how old are we?
You're 50.
I'm 50. Still 50. So, yeah, 51 shortly. I feel 51, not 50. But, you know, never say never and all of that. I would potentially have my wife's name, potentially have my kid's name. But nothing other than that, really. I mean, Adam jokes about, you know, if Everton won the Premier League, would you have the Everton crest? I was like, no, probably. Don't get me wrong, I know loads of people that have done that in the past and stuff, and you know.
I said if you won the league, I was thinking more the championship.
Oh, here we go. Well, to be fair, we got more chance with the Premier League than you have the Champions League, so there we go. So
there you go, Dave.
I'd probably have Czech Republic 1, Portugal 0, 64 minutes tattooed on my forearm.
Would you?
I wouldn't really. I'll just give you the score update. No, I wouldn't have the tattoo. It's pointless.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just scored. The only thing I wouldn't have one, I don't think. But if I because you asked, if I was to have one, it's a sentimental thing, and it's my dad died 13 years ago, and Jordan and Rebecca, niece and nephew, they got and Steve actually, all three of them got just a little simple paper plane tattoo because the kids had a memory of their granddad making paper airplanes with them, so they just got that as a memory to granddad. So the three of them have it. So if I did have anything, it would be that, but I aren't going to.
Okay, that's nice. I like that.
Look, I think you know, tattoos are a very personal thing, and you know, you look at some people, you go, "Fuck me, that's a shit tattoo." Like, why have you had that? But for them, that might be like
Talking about me.
I have seen a couple of your tattoos, and I did think that, to be fair, but
Nothing wrong with Yosemite Sam.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with Yosemite Sam, and I like him as a cartoon character. I wouldn't have him plastered in my whole fucking body, but but so I think look at, to me, every tattoo should be personal, should invoke a memory, and look, there's lots of people that will go, they love tattoos, and it's an expression of their memories and their thoughts and their feelings, and I've got no issue with that. Genuinely, I've got no issue with that. Just because I don't doesn't mean I don't appreciate why some people would, and they get almost addicted to having them. Got no problem with that whatsoever. I think, as Dave just there, I think the ones that are very personal, the ones that invoke memories or emotions or feelings are to me, the type of tattoo that I would have. I'm highly unlikely to have one, because I'm a wuss and it'll fucking hurt. But I'm unlikely to have one. But I think if I was, I think I'd be like Dave, like I say, wife's name, kids' names, a memory. Like you guys will remember my mum. She died when she was relatively young, like very young, 49 years old. So maybe something, with my mum, something like, I don't know. But I think Dave, I think you're right. I think something that invokes a very emotional response in you would be possibly the one I go for.
Yeah, I think for myself, if I have another one done, it will be my kids' names on my arm there. And I've talked about it for a while now, and eventually I will, I will go and get that done. But we are coming to...
In case you forget them, by the way.
But listen, I have a bracelet with their birthdays on it, just in case I forget those.
They're one of those tumblers, and he just guesses, he just spins it around. And it's like, oh, is it today?
It's like a fruit machine. Well, no, guys, Lindsay Cotton. That was the name.
Lindsay Cotton, right? Okay, right, perfect.
Yeah. So Lindsay, who came on, she spoke about the Pendle Witches. Lee, yes, we will take you up on that offer of getting a witch and a medium on. Absolutely, get in contact. Well, actually, I'll probably get in contact with you tomorrow. Don't you worry about that. I'll drop you a message. We'll sort something out, and you're welcome to come back on at the same time. So we are at the end of the episode. Somehow, whilst rambling for an hour, we've rambled for a little bit longer. Gaz, did you want to sum it up?
Absolute irrelevance for the last hour, but look, I've loved it. Look, as I said at the start, it's been a while since we just chewed the fat and just chatted and stuff, and every now and then I really enjoy it. Look, don't get me wrong, I love the interaction with the guests, and Lee, thank you very much for interacting tonight and all of that. And it's amazing when we get the guests on, but every now and then just keep it real, keep it close to the chest and close to home, and just the three of us just chatting shit basically. But look, it's been fascinating. I think, look, the Euros was the Euros. For me, the politics bit is where it gets really interesting, because we historically, I think we've been quite similar, yet we've sort of branched away from each other a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think historically we're probably all Tory, and now possibly we're not. So, but no, look, love tonight. It's been brilliant. Loved it.
Indeed, Dave.
Yeah, it's been good just to bang on about some stuff for a while. I prefer football. I don't really like discussing politics. I think it's I think people generally have with politics. It's much more emotional, and people feel quite strongly about it, and that sometimes means it's not a great debate, because it's very polarized, and it's not quite as lighthearted as football can be. So it's not my favoritist topic to that word favoritist. It's not my favoritist topic to be debating. But it's always good to have a bit of a banter about it, I suppose.
One thing we have to do, the one final question. Lee asked the question, is it coming home? And one thing I would definitely say on that is